By Sue Minahan.
Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests bring you leading-edge astrology conversations through a journey of soul growth patterns connecting astrology's energetic cycles. Get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
Sue, you're muted.
Oh, let's start over again. Today is June 12th, 2022. I'm Sue Rose Minahan and the founding host of Talk Cosmos. And I don't have any more COVID. I am thrilled to join the living world. And I hope for all of those that are so besieged that you find your remedies and your strength to continue. And as we navigate this new terrain, and that's really what we're going to talk about today, because our subject is Mercury, Venus, Mars, oh my. And it's because each of these planets very soon, as of pretty much the new moon coming up in a couple of days in Sagittarius, will be in their own sign and in the first of their own signs. That means Mars, Aries, not Scorpio, which it co-rules, along with the modern rulers, Pluto, and Venus in Taurus, not in its second sign of Libra, and Gemini, which is still finishing up the very tail end of Taurus because it's doing its third path through its shadow period after it's gone direct, which it always does, but it will go into Gemini and not Virgo, which it also co-rules. So with no more to be said, let's hear it all from Planet Buzz. We are ready.
Focusing on planetary ecliptic orbital cycles and planetary pairs called synodic cycles connecting to planets at the same degree that begin our relationship, these are the members of Planet Buzz.
I'm Sue Rose Minahan, founder of Talk Cosmos, an evolutionary and eclectic astrologer and consultant, plus a certified color energy coach. I love investigating mythology's language, philosophizing esoteric fields of eternity, a perpetual student of life, seeing oneness of body, spirit of people, animals, and nature. I explore creative expression as an artist, a musician, and write abundantly, poetry to stories, and celebrate humanity's individuated co-creative life force experience.
I'm Lesley Francis, author of the 2019 and 2020 Llewellyn Sun Sign books, a practicing professional astrologer intuitive, a lecturer, and host of my own podcast, Coloring Outside the Box. My lifelong search to understand what it is to be human led me to develop my own approach to astrology called purpose-centered astrology. I passionately seek to support people in their greatest act of creativity, living life, through consultations and webinars. Creator of Star Cards, I love talking and making people laugh.
And I'm Dr. Laura Tadd. I have a PhD in human science and work as a spiritually oriented psychological astrologer with people around the world. I teach and lecture on astrology both in person and remotely. I have a blog. I have written for the Mountain Astrologer, Celestial Vibes, and Tarot.com. Additionally, I am the educational coordinator for Live Life Resources, an educational nonprofit specializing in resiliency training, education, and research.
And as the ancient Hermetic code reveals,
As below, so above. As above, so below. Welcome again. It is such a pleasure always, and we're so coordinated here with our little warm colors, alive, vibrant. Yes. You know, these planets, they are voicing their autonomy. That's what I was thinking. You know, each one has like, I'm me. I got it down. Of course, Mercury's a little slow to the occasion, so we're kind of muddled. We won't muddle through. We'll always be explicit. And it all does begin on this full moon, which was just a recent recognition, because I was realizing that as of the 14th, Mercury goes into its own sign. And it is, anyway, maybe we should just pull that up. And I can share that right now. Laura and Lesley, hello. And if one, yeah.
Hi.
you have a thought here? Or what am I doing? Go ahead. Laura, do you have some ideas?
Let's pull up the chart. I mean, there's two ways to start, right? So looking at the upcoming full moon, as well as the fact that really multiple planets are in the signs that we see them to be naturally associated with. Right, definitely Mercury is about to be back in Gemini. It will be back there later in the day, on the day of the full moon, I guess, right? Or is it there?
No, it's earlier.
Okay, it's already there.
Check that out. This is, yeah, because right now, do you see the screen?
It is. It's quite small, so it's hard to read the degrees.
I'm sorry about that. Darn.
But so Mercury and Mars being in their natural signs. Of course, we've had Neptune in Pisces for years at this point. But so, and it's an interesting thing when planets are in the sign that we have assigned them domicile to, or like that they are considered to be in relationship with, because sometimes it can be misinterpreted to be a easier, harmonious place for the planet to reside. And I've actually found that it becomes it's such an intensification of the archetype that it isn't necessarily easy. It's more intense, right? I have Mercury in natally. And so my brain is going 100 miles an hour most of the time. And so, yes, it can make me articulate. It makes communication a really fundamental part of my identity. It's also my final dispositor, so it's seriously strong in my chart. But it also can mean that I can get tongue-tied. I can lose my train of thought because that Mercury is working in overdrive all the time. And so we're going back into that energy with Mercury getting back into Gemini in the next day and a half, of communication happening perhaps too quickly, right? Because Gemini rushes, Mercury rushes, and then you combine that and we can speak before we think things through, right?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, especially with Mercury in a sextile, like opportunist relationship to that Mercury, because Mercury will catch up to Mars while it's still in Aries. And so not only is the impulse of Mercury and Gemini to just get it moving thought-wise, and it's not detailed oriented in Gemini. It's all about what gets me thinking, what gets me excited, Mercury and Gemini loves to gather information and sometimes doesn't even really know why.
It can, because I am ruled by Mercury in Gemini and it's retrograde. And I must confess that at default, there is a moment of great pleasure. Like, well, if I just throw out the net of information, something will sift through. There'll be a pattern. Of course, it's all in the 9th house too, so it does help there, But, we do have these really distinct, energetic commands coming into us. And depending where they are, especially with Mars and Aries, it just is so instinctive. It really, and it's pre-verbal along with Venus in Taurus. So I think when we set up to this full moon, which I'm preparing a slide as we talk and I'm listening, because I want you to be able to see this. This is just not, like, what good is it if we don't get the facts here? So continue on, and I hope in a moment I'll be able to bring that up.
Well, it's interesting because even if it's not necessarily true, good Lord, am I having trouble? An aspect, Venus is going to sit between these two mavericks, trying to keep everything grounded, and yet it's approaching a conjunction to Uranus, and so there is, and the North Node. So there's a lot of opportunity here for new growth, for new initiatives. And, you know, the plus side of Mercury in Gemini is because it will entertain anything and everything. There's always a seed or something important. It's as that sometimes it's in so much of a hurry, it doesn't always recognize when it hit the gold mine. And so I think that, you know, the thing with Venus coming up to conjunct the North Node in Uranus is that it might suddenly, the form that this should take might suddenly become obvious, or I don't know.
Yeah, I could see that being this aha moment.
Yes.
Right. As well as with it, the conjunction to the North Node that has so much to do with the future, right? So how do we go forward with all of this data that Mercury is throwing in the basket, whether it's valuable or not, right? That's sort of that Mercury in Gemini, like just data collecting, and maybe there's value to it, and I'll sift through it later when I'm in Virgo. But that it's stuff that isn't that fleeting flash in the pan, quicksilver energy that's Mercury, because of that. I think as Venus comes into that conjunction with the North Node, is how does this information carry us forward? What is valuable in the future? And this is true, you know, we can see this globally and collectively, as well as at an individual level. So seeing where that falls for somebody in their chart, what are they cultivating to bring forward into their future, and see the value in the data that's been gathered. And then Mars being able to act on it, and all that fiery energy, the value of that Mars in Aries is that proactivity, that being able to, and the stamina that might be required to go the distance, right? That Mars in Aries has a lot of stamina, even though it can.
Well, it does, just because it just wants to keep moving. I mean, there is a certain part where even with COVID here, there was this desire, you know, it's desire. It's all kind of synergetic how it works. And it's not all intellectual at all. It's sort of like find out after the fact, you know, how things are moving along. Especially when you get Uranus in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the value that we could see, because that Mars in Aries, as much as its stamina, it could go 100 miles an hour, you know, and run the marathon, is that the beauty, I think, in Venus being in Aries at the same time is it can temper some of that of like valuing where you're running to, and not just running for the sake of running, where Mars in Aries on its own doesn't really care.
Well, yeah, because I was going to say Mars in Aries can exhaust itself by constant motion.
Yeah,
that's true.
You know, and without a sense of purpose, just moving because that's what it needs to do. And so the Venus in Taurus is seeking some level of purpose or direction. What can I grow, but also what can I ground? What's real? What's because Taurus is all very much about what's real. So
and how can and my senses, what do I sense? Can I feel? Can I touch it? You know, I mean, in what way does it speak? And of course it gets into the body. And I suppose so much of us, having had COVID here, it was like I suddenly, you know, relaxed. I had to relax. I had to sleep. I was sleeping 12 hours a day. You know, I don't do that often. And then when you relax like that, you become integrated with the moment in a different physical sense of things. And I was actually sleeping outdoors because we have a 1-bedroom place, and so it was very lovely. You know, I've got the lanai there and the water. Of course, it would get wet in the morning, and you know, it's just, and the birds would wake me up, and you know, it's a whole. The physical is a whole way that we talk about, but it's so different. I'm still trying to pull up this chart. I don't know why I'm having such trouble. Any rate, we will continue on.
Well, it's a Mercury. It's a Mercury.
We're still in the shadow for another day and a half, another couple, like what, the 19th, I think we're out of the shadow. So
I try my best to ignore that.
Another week or so of being in the shadow.
Oh my
Well,
gosh.
you know, sometimes when I look at that whole range of it, it's almost like, is there any time you can actually do something? So, you know, and you know, it's interesting because we always talk about, I think we talk about the shadow in some ways as if it, as we do retrogrades, as if it's something necessarily negative, when in actual fact, it's just part of the process, right?
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah,
part of
I
the ebb
always,
and flow.
the image I have, or the analogy I often use with clients, is I think of the shadow as sort of the last pass when you're sweeping, right? Like you swept the floor and then you did like the last little shards of things before the
But
floor is
what were
clean.
we
I like
doing?
that.
Yeah, but I keep trying to remember, what was I doing? What is it that I'm trying to sweep up? I'm not even sure anymore. You know, I mean,
Well, here's the deal. Sometimes you don't know. You just keep. It's like, you know, the whole process of healing. Sometimes it's such a um, deep subterranean process in lots of ways, and sometimes you don't even know that you've done any healing until your response to things changes, until you have some sort of an external experience that says, oh yeah, I'm handling this differently. Something has shifted, something has changed.
well, then I think we need to talk really realistically about what's happening here in the country, because it's like the dragon in the room, or the elephant, whatever you want to call it. You know, we do have a lot of serious cause for, and this is in the United States, of course. Lesley, you're in Canada, and but yet the gun control and just the protection. You know, at Ceres, okay, this full moon is out of bounds. That's one thing I was realizing. And
Oh,
Ceres is at 13 degrees. I've got to pull up this. If anybody can pull up this chart, I'm desperately trying to do it, and I'm having a lot of trouble. And I want to get it up. I'm desperate. So I'm just
sorry,
not
I'm of
getting
no
there.
help whatsoever.
Yeah, I need some help here. If
Laura can step in.
But at any
I
rate,
just don't know if I have the permission to do it, but I can.
well, if you, yeah, we can do that. But at any rate, I want to, or else pull it up yourself. So we
Everybody can
see it.
share. That's what.
Yeah, pull up your own chart, because we need to get going on this. It's 13. Ceres is 13 degrees Cancer, which is
Yeah.
conjunct the United States sun. Ceres is also out of bounds. So we have Ceres out of bounds. We have the moon out of bounds. We're talking about nurturing. We're talking about grief. We're talking about a mythology of food and trying to reclaim sustenance for ourselves in some ways when
Well,
things are out of bounds. And it's not so unusual that the moon's out of bounds. From what I understand, it goes through a 10-year cycle, and we're in a 10-year cycle where the moon is going to be out of bounds. And that means when it means out of bounds, it's outside of that ecliptic path of the sun, meaning it's in its own territory. The moon is reflecting energies, and right now it's reflecting back to us this Taurian sense of survival, and that sense of really, like we were talking about, our bodies and how are we sensing things as we're trying to navigate forth. It's trying to talk to us, and I don't think we know the language. So that's where it's really go,
I
please.
did want to point out that Ceres was also connected to the Eleusinian mysteries.
Yes, absolutely.
Some of the stuff that we ascribe currently to Pluto is also her territory.
Absolutely. And I was just taking a class with Patricia Walsh, a wonderful astrologer that's associated with Wise Soul Astrology now, with Laura Nalbandian and Rose Marcus. And Patricia, of course, does intense regression work. And so I was really investigating about that mythology, which I have looked at many, many times, about Inanna, who is a precursor, you could say, to Venus, as she goes through her 7 gates, which is like the gateways as Venus rises and falls. And I'm saying these things pretty fast for those that know about it and understand what I'm speaking of, or want to look into it more. But it is this sense of claiming our, okay, going back to, I suddenly got lost in the myth. Yes, of the mysteries of looking at our shadow sides of grief, the grief that Ceres in losing her daughter, which is personified in that case. But then, of course, the daughter becomes this rebirthing of life that continues as the vegetation continues, which we all experience, but it's within ourselves. There's so many ways to encapsulate it.
So we have the chart.
Oh, good. I will quit and I will come back to us. Yay, there it is. Thank you so much.
I was going to say, you can't see it?
Oh, good. Yes, ma'am. Okay, beautiful. Yes. And so we have here, it's going to be 23 degrees in the mutable signs. Oh, boy, that happens to be right on my dwarf planet of Orcus, which is also with Alan Clay, the brother of Pluto, which is in forces. It says we have an oath, and if we don't follow with that oath, we better know our oath. And that's really the mystery, it seems to me. What's our oath? But we have an oath, and if we don't follow it, we get drug under the underworld. There's no two ways about it. But at any rate, that's
so we have a full moon with Neptune forming a T-square to the full moon.
With a T-square to
the sun moon opposition.
Sun moon Neptune at 25 Pisces squaring the 23 degree full moon.
Neptune.
So no wonder we're having trouble. No wonder we're being so Neptunian at times.
There's a purpose to all that. That's what I'm really understanding. I think if all of us can comprehend, there's a reason why there's a veil that comes in front of our eyes, or that we get tired and we stop focusing on what we've always been focused on, because maybe that's not the direction anyway. Maybe we need to go a different way, like the Cheshire Cat, right?
Yeah, I think this is asking for the dissolution of old beliefs and old thought patterns.
Absolutely.
And opening your consciousness to because I always think that the fog or the veil over your eyes has everything to do with releasing things, so a clearer vision can come into play.
Yes, so that we can notice colors
gets
that
a
we
bad
haven't
rap,
seen
actually.
before. Huh?
I said Neptune gets a bad rap, I think.
Oh, it does. We always get critical because we want to hold on to what we know, because at least it's familiar, as rotten as it might be. And that really has to get into our psyches. Let go and trust.
So I was trying to remember what degree the last lunar eclipse in the Sag Gemini.
Sabians, or what are you talking about, please?
The total lunar eclipse that we had.
No, I was talking about the lunar. Did we not have a lunar eclipse in December 2021?
Yes, we did. And the lunar
was it at the same degree as what I was trying to get at?
It was in Scorpio. You were talking about the one.
No, a year ago. The one that would have been
December 2021.
December.
Oh, December 21.
The full moon and there would have been a full moon in Sun and Gemini, Sun and Sag, Moon and Gemini. I just wondered if it was the same degree.
The solar eclipse on June 10th was at 19 degrees Gemini 47.
Right. No.
Is that what you're talking about?
No.
Well, then be very specific. I'm sorry, I'm lost.
I said
December.
The lunar eclipse in December 2021.
Okay, that was solar eclipse was 12 degrees Sag.
Okay.
At 22 degrees.
And I wanted to know what the lunar eclipse was in December 2020.
Well, it wasn't December. It was November. It was November 19th. Lunar eclipse.
You're talking about a solar eclipse. I'm talking about a lunar eclipse.
No, this is lunar. I'm saying it's lunar eclipse. I said lunar. November 19th, 2021. It was in.
Okay, my mistake. I thought there was my apologies.
No, because interestingly, it was not in congruency with the nodes. It went ahead because it was so late. It was right on my Mars. 27
For some reason,
degrees.
I thought maybe I was thinking about December 2020. Anyways,
okay. Well, what's your point? Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
It doesn't matter because of it. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It was this point getting triggered again? Was
we're
the question.
A beautiful example of Neptune, and that's how it works in our brains, doesn't it? It's like, yes, I know this. No, well, why do we? No, we don't care. Oh, okay, delete, onward.
Well, no, we keep on getting off track, so I just wanted to drop it.
Okay, no, we're all trying to grasp our. Okay, well, looking at this chart, oh boy, we do realize that the point of our conversation too is not only, okay, if it's illuminating a full moon, it wanting us to release, and you poignantly brought up that it is in our multiplicity of ideas that we're holding on to in order to form a new emotional base with our belief systems. And meanwhile, we have some real good characters standing up. We have Gemini that says, well, I do have information, but it's new information. We have Venus that's saying, well, you better think about your resources here and your talents, and maybe think a little bit artistically because it's in Taurus. And I think also Mars wants us to think artistically. Maybe that's part of the language.
Well, I think that the full moon reiterates what we were talking about, that Lara so accurately described in terms of what the process is like. And of course, the universe through astrology tends to repeat itself just to make sure that we didn't miss the message. Although that when it comes to human consciousness, there's no guarantee.
Oh, of course we're going to miss the message. Yeah. We always miss it. That's half the problem, you know. What is the message? And besides that, how do we communicate? Can we communicate? I don't think we can. I think that is a huge problem. We assume that we're communicating, and we communicate on some basis that is whoever decided. I don't know, but there's so many instructions out there. Everything's got to be on an instructive, literal sense. And to me, that is not communication. It's a poetic sense. It's allegories. It's mythology. It is the stories of life. And do people have time for that? No. They want the points. They want it smack in their face, and they want to have it what they know about. And it totally doesn't work. So we're coming in.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of what this moon can bring in too is around communication, right? Because Laura talked about, Laura Nabanian would talk about how Sag can have that, if I'm communicating with you and you don't agree, it's because you don't understand what I'm saying. As opposed to, you may totally understand, you just don't agree. But Sag as an energy can very much embody that archetype of, you must be misunderstanding me, otherwise we'd all agree.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
It's the self-righteousness of the whole thing. And I did want to point out that with the personal, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, each in their own sign, this really is an invitation for personal development. It's not a time when we can necessarily project outwards and assume that the world is acting upon us. This is our opportunity to change, our own personal reality and therefore change our lives.
Oh, yeah. Lesley, I love that. That's a beautiful segue to take a little break and come back again. I am with Lesley Francis of Edmonton, Canada, and Dr. Laura Tadd of Georgia, and myself in Hawaii. We will be right back. Planet Buzz. Thank you.
While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the period of Gemini. By leaving a cycle based on physical form, integrated through spirit, the energy of Gemini connects spirit with matter, focused on communicating and defining the external. Gemini is a mutable air sign signifying flexibility. Gemini dually focuses upon teaching and learning in order to synthesize the world one lives within.
Hi, it's Dr. Laura Tadd, and I wanted to let you know about my course in personal mythology. Now offered as a self-paced online class, you can explore the stories you live by and those you have inherited from your ancestors, culture, and society. This course comes with 8 30-minute check-ins with me as you move through each of the modules. Enrollment is ongoing. For more information or to register, please go to my website, mythicsky.com.
Talk Cosmos brings you leading-edge astrological conversations with hour-long programs each week on KKNW. The show goes live every Sunday from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific. Talk Cosmos weekly programs are also available to watch live on Facebook and YouTube, along with daily chats throughout the week on the Talk Cosmos YouTube channel. While you're there, make sure you click like and subscribe buttons so you can get the full Talk Cosmos experience. Or, if you'd rather listen to the show archives with audio only, the entire podcast collection since 2018 is available on most podcast carriers. So, grab your coffee, tea, or kombucha and enjoy the show.
Hi, this is John Foster, astrologer and software developer, and you're listening to Talk Cosmos on Alternative Talk 1150 AM, where we understand how to implement our free will through the cosmos.
Want to hear something different from talk radio? Keep your dial on Alternative Talk 1150.
Hello again, here we are. And I was noticing my notes, and there's a few things. Sky and Telescope says that the best time to see the lineup is on June 24th. And it'll be 45 minutes before sunrise and in the eastern horizon, wherever you are, because 4 of the naked eye planets, which is a great way of realizing these inner planets, they've been lining up, but it'll be including Saturn, which will be in Aquarius, irreverent, wonderful, satirical, mind-awakening Aquarius, and it'll be Mars, Jupiter, and Venus, and they'll spread out. So they've been starting since June 3rd and 4th, but really that'll be the best moment to do that. And they also said that the Hercules cluster, which is sort of interesting when, anyway. So for those stargazers, which hopefully we all are if you can see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time in that way where none of the larger bodies, right? There's stars at night, but no real planet is visible in the evening right now. Everything sets before the sun does. And so we're in this part of, like, jumping off of what you were saying, Lesley, of this inner process. I think that that's part of that, with all the planets, the personal planets being in their natural signs, that we also, because of the time of year that that's lining up in, are in a time where that happens to be, if a baby was born now, they'd have the whole chart below the horizon if they were born after sunset.
Yeah, the autonomy of it all. Yes, Lesley.
Well, I was going to say it's very interesting because we've been talking an awful lot about initiation, and here we're describing the personal planets as being morning stars, which is physically we're seeing in the sky what we feel internally. And
yes.
Sometimes we forget that part, right? We do.
Indeed. In fact, I was noticing too, Mercury in Gemini starts as of the 14th until July 5th. So it'll be 3 weeks that these planets are in their own signs. But Venus has been in Taurus since the Gemini new moon just about, which is May 29th. And actually it only goes until June 24th. Okay.
Yeah, Venus moves into Cancer at the end of the month.
Yeah, so it won't be that whole time. Okay. But Mars, it was March 25th, and it will continue until July 8th. So we'll be ready, set, go, or something like that. I don't know.
I don't know. Are Mars and Gemini ready?
Yeah.
Good question.
Well, I guess along with Jupiter, it is, there are initiatives. Many times in our discussion, we talk about where it is in our personal planet. In our personal chart. And because we're talking about a spread of planets, although they are chronological, except for Saturn. I was thinking, for me, because I have most of my planets above the horizon, it is above the horizon. That's one way I can put it. And I am constructing, I think Saturn has a lot to do about this, even though for the full moon, we have Neptune, which is shifting and dissolving, our general, as we talked about it. Very soon, we have these conjunctions with Venus that's going to Uranus and then the North Node. And
it's already conjunct Uranus. It did that 2 days
Yeah,
ago.
it's between Uranus and the North Node at the full moon. Yeah,
we haven't had the full moon.
Right, but the conjunction, I think, was 2 days ago to Uranus.
Oh, because I have it down. Okay, because in my charts, I had it down for the 15th and 16th.
I don't know.
That it was. Okay, well, very good. You know what? Details. I'm sorry. I will.
It's your Virgo again.
It is. It's like, let's go. Gee whiz, trying to. Thank you. Don't sew this up together. Very good. And so, point being where it is. Okay, I'll just.
It occurred at 16. Maybe that's what you were thinking. Like the conjunction was at 16 degrees
of Taurus.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
but
getting mixed
Venus
up
is currently 17 and Uranus is 16. So we're past.
So we're in this. Well, I was trying. There's a literary piece that I've been trying to put together in some form over many years in different times. And so I finally decided a new format. And I think I showed it to you. It was a cartoon, which I haven't quite picked up again. But it does, I think, will help me, even as a outline, illustrate some of my thoughts together. So because it merges the pictures with the words. And it also has a different characteristic to it. It isn't built on a literary form where you have paragraphs and sentences and thoughts that have to connect and etc. But it's more, it can be erratic. It can be like, oh, we'll do this all of a sudden. So that's as much as I can share how these energies are congealing in this brain. So,
are they congealing? No.
Thank you, Lesley. Yeah. So have either of you ideas of what all these?
Well, I think we might reach some level of clarity once Mercury goes into Gemini, strangely enough. For me, Mars is in my 9th house, even though I have an Aries midheaven, and I have Taurus intercepted. So both Venus and Mars, and even Mercury, when it moves back in, it's all about my 10th house. And I'm kind of in flux because I've initiated something new, and yet trying to get fully into it seems to be something of a challenge based on events going on in my life.
Yes.
Like people trying to scam me out of lots of money and stuff like that. And wondering if I have COVID because so many of the people I hung out with ended up with COVID. Anyway, and then sort of dealing with some trauma response. So for me, it's in a sense, it's a perfect storm of kind of where we're at and where we're going.
I wonder if some of that, because we didn't talk about, but Mars will be, for the full moon, conjunct Chiron. So it's really close to that at the moment.
Yes, and guess where the full moon is? It's conjunct my natal Chiron.
There you go. Yeah.
Yes,
so I'm just let me finish it. So I'm in some sort of I'm trying to initiate something new and not drag along shit from the past. I guess that's the best. And because when we're talking about an initiatory process, don't really know what the concrete form of that is going to be just yet. So what were you wanting to say, Sue?
No, I was supporting, pardon me, it was that. And I also really find it helpful to hear as you express, because this merging of a storm, which it feels like has been very evident. And also this mix of life coming in, which I would imagine all of us are feeling. We have real hardships in life here with gas pumps and with people creating causes necessarily about trying to get some comprehensive thinking about gun control. And, it filters into our own consciousness. And then, those are just some manifestations. But on a personal level, I too had the COVID and trying to, so what you were saying is so appropriate. And then too, the new factors, because I was realizing we're all on boards. I just joined the Washington State Astrological Association board. And so I think really, which I haven't quite stepped into, but I think we're all trying new shoes, you know.
Well, it's funny because I hadn't thought about this before, because I've, talking with friends and other people that right now the energy seems very frenetic. At the same time, we feel stuck. Which, I say that not to discourage people, but so that you understand that, this is honestly, it's like the energy of childbirth, actually. That's like the energy of childbirth. There's a lot going on, but are you actually going anywhere?
Well, I think
she said, having given birth to 3 children, it's like, yeah, it's a lot like that, actually.
Well, I think this really does correlate back with the fact that the moon's out of bounds, and not all the time, it kind of comes and goes. And Ceres itself is out of bounds, and it's combined with Chiron. So what am I saying? It's a lot about nurturing. It's a lot about grief before we get to these points. And it's old, grief and trauma build up from past experiences in little ways that maybe opens up that area that we can look at again, hopefully fresh, that not just to penalize us, but in order to help us understand.
And I think that just the idea of sort of that rush and stop is Aries Taurus, right? I always think of because every sign's in response to the previous. So Aries is running 100 miles an hour, and Taurus throws on the emergency brake, right? And so that is this rush, stop, rush. No, we have to, what's the value? You can't just take action. You have to have purpose behind it. And that it can feel jarring, because just as you get going, you get momentum and inertia, push through the inertia, and then you're forced to stop and evaluate, or stuff happens that forces you to second guess or assess the situation. Okay, now I have to, there's a detour. What direction am I going to go?
Well, how is it in your life? Maybe we should.
I just wanted to say one more thing, because I wanted to reiterate what you said, Sue, about Saturn. Because if you're looking at the full moon chart, the full moon is applying to a sextile to, as is the sun. The sun is applying to a trine to Saturn, and the moon is applying to a sextile. So here's the outlet, and it is about appropriate timing. It's about structure. It's about a whole bunch of other things. So how are these 3 planets tromping around in your chart?
and thank you, Lesley. I'll add to that I was wanting to bring up Saturn. I'm glad you did, because that ruler of form that we've been accustomed to in form, which of course is our skeleton. It is the creation of our structures that the reality holds around, but it's in Aquarius. That is an air sign that wants to break the pattern, to realign things, and it can be chaotic, and it can be sudden, and part of this is, and it's intuitive. It's beautifully intuitive. So,
geez, I was going to say something and it just flew out of. I was going to flog my own podcast. I just did a podcast on, is time a structure or an energy?
Ooh.
Now, if that's not Saturn and Aquarius, I don't know what is.
Well, it could be both. Can it be like a wave and a particle? Can it be? Yeah. I mean, I always think
but most people think about my people define too much of their lives based on time.
Well, it's because it's very true. This is very esoteric in a way, and I love this whole idea about time. It's a fascination. But really, what's time associated with? I mean, first, time is an organic, because the moon, the sun, and the sun and the moon, it goes right back to Inanna, and it goes right back to all this mythology.
I know, but I wasn't talking about it I was talking about it in terms of how humans interpret time.
Well, they do, because they consider it, okay, it's time up to have a form, like the baby's going to be born. But the fact is that it's okay. Thank you.
Well,
We will
yeah,
listen to
anyways,
the podcast.
there is a part of it that's a human construct, right? Humans are the ones who decided we have
That's right.
a 24-hour day, right? It could have been broken up in any way. We just decided that time is this, and it's a human construct.
Yeah, it could have been daybreak,
you.
sunrise, sunset, moon. Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess we've deviated from Laura. Here, Laura.
Back to Laura.
Thank you.
Well, so the full moon's in my first house because I've got a Sag rising.
Ooh.
But yeah, all of the personal planets are on the bottom half of my chart with that Sag rising. Mercury will get back into my 7th, but it actually won't get back. It'll be there for the first time this year because I have an 8-degree descendant, so it went retrograde before it got there. So everything's in the bottom half. 5th, basically all sort of 4th, 5th, 6th.
Wow.
Just the opposite of mine. Yeah.
And then a lot of that is I'm 2 weeks out of my solar return. So I'm going to get this long after everything moves on because I'm in a Mercury return for my birthday. So I'll continue to have it. By then it'll have gotten into my 7th. So that Mercury energy being really strong. So another year of like real focused communication.
Good.
And Mars trining my Mars, right? So a lot of energy around communicating, I think, is going to be a big part of the theme. And how am I, in some ways, going back to time, how am I managing my time with all of the writing, with all of the communicating I'm doing, right? That I just started a podcast myself and I made a calendar of when I'm going to record, right?
Now, what's your name of the podcast? What name do you have?
Mythic Sky Story Time, because it's on my website's Mythic Sky. So Mythic Sky.
And what time? Now, I think Lesley is doing 2 a month plus 1 for Fresh Voices, which is the British outlet.
No, female first, honey.
Female first. Thank you. And Laura, what time zone will it be? Once a month, once a week? How are you structuring it?
Probably 3 times a month, give or take, is
She's
sort of
got
the
a
calendar I made
Okay.
of looking at sort of timing it, not for like the weekly weather, but new moon, full moon, and sun ingress. So sometimes it lands on the same day.
Yeah.
There's a couple months where like the new moon is hours before the sun ingresses into the next sign. So I'm not sure if that'll be a single recording.
Yes.
There's a couple times where things land that way, but
Beautiful.
Or you could just do 2 separate recordings on the same day.
yeah.
Because I did a reading with Donna Stillhorn for my birthday, and she just told me, based on your chart, Lesley, try not to be too structured. It really doesn't work for you.
This really, thank you for that, because it is all about Saturn and Aquarius deconditioning, isn't it? And I'm also realizing as we have some time here, I was thinking with Mars and Chiron and the activating of wounds, going back to the beginning of trauma, I am thinking, because Chiron is, as we know, the wounded healer, that Hercules, it's interesting, that's why I was thinking Hercules, the cluster will be visible, and Hercules is this.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was just thinking of the mythology of it all, because it is related to Chiron, because Hercules had the arrow that wounded, and it was a whole story of not jumping out of the point. But the point is that Chiron, the healer, this great half horse, this merging of our natural being and of mankind being and nature being, was unable to remedy its wound on its leg. So I'm thinking, as a climate is the world we're talking to, and of course we're coming from the United States, and the United States is also going through this huge year. I mean, it's not just this year, it's going to be for years. It has been for a couple years, and readdressing our wounds from the Revolutionary War. Like, what was this? Who were we? And of course, with that, it also comes up with maybe, at any rate, I could expand into where these wounds go to. But what I'm getting at is that we're trying
Well, it's
to.
not so much about core identity, right? Aries being I am, right? Key phrase for Aries, I am. So collectively, whether you're in the States or Canada or in Europe or China, it's this the wounds around identity, about the first, right? Aries is the first initiatory sign. It's the beginning of spring in the Northern Hemisphere. It's this I am. Who do we put our punch out into the world, as my godmother, who is an astrologer, used to describe Mars, right? It's how we lead and go forward. And so these wounds that we all have, whether it's collective or personal, it's both, right? That are wounds around putting ourselves forward in the world. And whether we shrink because we're afraid of how that's going to be received, or we're overly aggressive because we're afraid of how it's going to be received, right? It's still this karmic, this past life, prior life wounding around feeling like who we are is enough.
Yeah. So I think, Lesley, you wanted to say something, or else I would jump in. Did you have a
No,
thought?
I just wondered, does the US chart not have a moon in Aquarius?
Well, it does.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
27.
And Chiron in Aries.
Huh?
And Chiron in Aries.
So it's going through a Chiron transit, a Saturn transit, a Pluto transit.
Absolutely. All these things. And yes, many things.
Because Canada's a Cancer too, but we're 3 days earlier than you.
But I think what I'm grabbing at is, it's not just the individual, it's the collective. It's this whole climate of individuals that came separated. It's the whole idea of separation. Patricia Walsh in her really brought up the idea that it is Aries point itself is that whole separation point. And it's a separation, you could say, from like the Chiron, from nature, from the whole, from the universe. Like, what was that experience? And also that Chiron, these wounds are not replicated in exactness. In other words, it's not like, oh, that was the story, but it's some shade of that story. So here we are in this climate right now of people trying to defend each other. Well, when I say defend each other, they're trying to defend the control. Honey, can you turn that off? Gosh, we only have a little bit. Okay, I'm going to mute myself. Go ahead, pick it up.
Well, I don't.
I mean, I think that Aries point of, right, that separation is, if we look at just before that, we have the end of Pisces. So it's that individuation away from the divine. That's that collective, that everything is everything in all directions.
Well, it's also the separation from mother, if you really want to.
Sure. Yep.
Right?
That moment of birth.
Mama Gaia.
Well, and Mama. I mean.
Oh yeah, Mamma Mia. No.
Yeah. So, well,
Sorry.
yeah. You know, I don't.
Well,
to be honest, I mean, I do pay attention, obviously, to the news of what's going on in your country, but I don't spend a lot of time looking at the U.S. chart. So I'm kind of out of my depth when it comes to this. I don't want to make pronouncements about something.
No. And that's not. It is. We are to be universal, and it is very personal too, isn't it? We're talking about these personal.
Well, no, because
signs.
you know.
Yeah.
I think
here's the deal. You know, in a sense, the U.S. became the world's guru in lots of ways, both on every financially, militarily, the whole 9 yards. And we're getting to see that there is a shadow to that.
Absolutely.
That, you know, separating from Big Daddy because you don't like it and becoming Big Daddy yourself.
Yeah, It is. It's like, get down. Let's get down to those shadows of Inanna. Let's go in there and poke around because, you know, Pluto's still in Capricorn. It wants to see what forms are down there. Like, is it a real gem or is it a fake gem? And let's look at those.
Or is it just a bunch of shit down there?
Yeah, exactly. And if so, let's compost it. Put your seeds in. Yeah. Did you have something, Laura? Quickly.
I'm not quite sure how to respond. Other than in looking at the collective and the individual, it's how the individual is impacted by the collective and vice versa.
Yes, we are. Again, we have some, as the universe, as above, so below, as below, so above. Thank you, Lesley Francis. Thank you, Laura, Tadd, Dr. Tadd. Thank you. Talk Cosmos will return, and we thank our audience. Okay, we'll sign off. Bless.
Thank you for joining us on Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests connect soul growth patterns with the energetic cycles of astrology. Be sure to tune in next Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.